All right,
Is this public?
I think we have
This is public.
Here that.
Is there something that I need to say in accordance with or anything along those lines? Because I don't have it here.
No. It's just, open up the meeting.
All right, just good evening. This is Don Martinez, Chairman of the Town Charter and Bylaw, Zoning Bylaw Committee. Today is April 12th, Monday, and it's 7 p.m. I want to welcome you all. Thank you all for joining. Jim, should we do a roll call?
Yeah, that's probably good to get our.
Okay, starting with our members via Zoom, would you just state your name, and because I can't see the Zoom from here on the screen. So who's joined via Zoom?
So I see Brian here.
Yep, Brian Salisbury.
Brian Salisbury.
And
Brian.
Bill
How you
O'Connell.
doing?
Bill O'Connell.
And
Hey,
Bill,
Bill,
you got on you.
I don't see Bill. Is he off camera, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Bill. And then President, I'll start over to my right, Larry.
Larry Sposano.
Kelly Grant.
Grace. Dennis. Ex-official member Dennis. And Don Martinez, as I said. And missing tonight, Jim, would you just say who's missing for the minutes?
Yeah, so Jen Altamonte sends her regards. She's not going to be able to join us tonight. Joe Calamati is feeling under the weather, not going to be able to join us tonight. And I believe Sue Garden is trying to log in, so she might be joining us shortly.
Okay, great, excellent. So for tonight, Jim sent out an agenda. Jim and I had a conversation earlier this week, and one of the thoughts that I had as an idea, and I wanted to run by the board, maybe to get through this within the 12 months as a desired objective, is to kind of break down the areas into sections and form subcommittees to work on those sections, as opposed to all of us trying to work on the entire document. For those that added to the document from the last meeting, I want to thank you all for doing so. There was a lot of comments there. Jim's capturing it, and Jim, as we go through the, hello?
Sorry, Tim's getting rowdy out there.
Oh, okay, no worries. And as we go through those changes, I think we'll have a cross section of just kind of look at the items, and then what Jim and I discussed was that he's going to make sure that any changes we want to make, he's going to look at Mass General Law to make sure that we're in compliance with any changes. So that it's an easy agenda today. Jim thought about the logical sections. So we just want to kind of, Jim, if you could talk about those sections that we discussed.
Sure.
And then whoever wants to volunteer, maybe as sort of a head of that particular group. And then we'll set some timelines when we want to make change, to go through, address changes. Then the next meeting, hopefully when we come back in a month, those subcommittees will have met independently, read through their section, made any notes or comments and suggestions or changes. And then we'll review those in the next meeting. If that seems reasonable. That way we can get through more of this, I think, in a faster time limit and not put too much onus on everybody.
Yeah, so I think as Mr. Martinez said, we were kind of divide and conquer, and dividing into three logical sections. It seemed like, the incorporation and the committees, boards and committees. Basically, the first section is really the one joint area. The second section is mostly finance related, and then it's kind of the general personnel aspects of it. I think Mary's on the line as well, so I know we would likely have Mary help us with leading the charge on the finance aspect of things. The boards and committees would be the first section, and then kind of the general others, the library committee, others that may need to weigh in. So those would be the three sections, and I think Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but for tonight, I think the goal here is to start from the top and kind of work our way through. That gives everybody kind of a sense of, what we're looking to kind of to talk through. Any changes. There's a lot of great comments already. on the Google Doc, which is now on your screen there. If you have access to it, you're welcome to pull it up. Everyone can see it all at the same time. So we could work through that charter tonight. Again, it's not meant, as Don mentioned, the goal is to try and get that through the year, right?
Yeah.
But tonight I think it's starting to get some high level. This section we should be highlighting, and I'll go back and start doing work and working with the different departments. Larry with Mass General Laws, with Mary with finance aspects, and trying to get back to you all the questions that might come out of tonight. So there's a lot of fine tuning of language that we don't expect to get done tonight.
Yeah.
But kind of high level, going section by section, saying, okay, we need to look at this. We need to look at it, whatever it may be. And I think that dialogue has already started with the comments in the Google Doc.
And the idea that I had is that we have a great blend of committee members here. And for those that have experience with the finance committee, I think it would be great to have them attack that area first. For those that have areas like I know Sue with the library, et cetera, it would be great to have her involved in those areas. So I'm just throwing it out as an idea. It's not what I want is what we want as collectively as a group, but it's just a thought. And again, it's just an idea. So I think from now Jim, we're going to go right from the top. We'll start there, and then at the end we can sort of divide and conquer the subcommittees. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. So if you can just take us through.
Will do. So on your screen here, we're starting at the very top. And so I think if we want, as we're scrolling through, if you see something that you saw and you said, Jim, please stop, let's highlight that, let's talk about that some, or can you please go back and review this a little closer? Please feel free at any point here. So Article 1 is right at the top here. This is our general incorporation. So unless anyone wants to change the town name, I think we're good at the moment. This way. We're going through. So the very first comment, just highlighting the very first aspect of where it says Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
So this is something that the Select Board has taken on already. Almost a year now, it feels like, to change it to Select Board. So that it's riddled throughout the charter. So we're going to have to certainly sift through that and figure out exactly where it's mentioned and change it. And I'll certainly do that.
There shouldn't be any problem. I guess we just check with Mass General Law to see how we would incorporate that change into the charter. Correct?
There's actually a new bill with the representatives or Senate, but it's already to change this statewide.
Good.
So that shouldn't be an issue.
So
There's a lot of work for Larry to change it, but it's.
I actually did call the Secretary of State's office to get, because I noticed that some towns were changing it through their charter, but they were also doing a separate vote at town meeting.
Okay, interesting.
So I called and asked them if that's necessary or not,
Mm-hmm.
and they may get back to me tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I knew Larry and I had a conversation. I knew it probably is going to be just a little bit more than just changing the charter, but yeah, that's good. So can work through that. All right, moving along here. Again, please feel free to stop me at any point. The construction of the charter, the intergovernmental relations, pretty generic. So we move in quickly to Article 2, and this is the legislative
Hey,
branch.
Jim, can I ask you to minimize the, so I can read the comments?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I did have a question. While you're minimizing the comments, do you still want comments to go on there? Because
Yep.
I have them in my notes, but I didn't necessarily put them up there.
I would like them to be on that docs, and the reason why I say that we have a record and an audit of suggestions that are made for the committee. So
Yeah, and
I think
that's perfectly fine too, Larry.
Yeah.
If you have handwritten comments, you just want to scan them over to me.
Yeah.
So I can add them to this document saying, from Larry and just type it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a problem at all. All right. So, legislative branch, this is where we start getting into some questions here. So early on in section 222, in the absence of the town moderator, the town meeting shall, as its first act, elect a temporary moderator by a majority vote. The town clerk shall preside until such election has taken place. And the comment here is, how does the election occur? Is this a temporary vote at town meeting in question or a bona fide election at ballot box? What happens if we don't have a town clerk in place at that time?
Town clerk or town moderator?
A town clerk to
Yeah.
go ahead
Preside
and
over
show
the Yeah.
preside.
Well, the way Mass General Law reads is that the town clerk is not available. I don't know if you don't have one at all, but if the town clerk is not available, they're supposed to designate a person
Mhm.
to take over.
Right.
So,
And I think we can, I think elections, in the absence of the town meeting shall as its first act elect or vote to appoint a temporary moderator who
Mhm.
shall serve for the term of that town meeting.
Right.
I think it's
Just for that town meeting,
but I-
right.
I think clarity is a good
Just-
idea there.
The concern that I have is that because the town moderator is going to moderate the town, but he also appoints the finance committee. So if the moderator was absent for a period and the town clerk took over, we want to make sure that transition and the moderator comes back, that there's still that person.
And this actually has occurred.
Does it? Yeah.
Ian Odovashian served as town moderator because the town moderator was unavailable for some reason at one point in time.
Mhm.
Jim? Can we go back to 2.11?
Yep. The legislative powers of the town shall be vested in a town meeting open to the voters of the town.
Yeah, I think it should say registered voters.
I do too, Bill, but if you go further, and this is the question that I have, there's sort of a glossary in the back. And it says that voters means registered voters. So it's kind of redundant, but I think that section should really be up front. Here it's section 751. And there's a whole bunch of terms there.
I still think it should be here first.
Well, I think this should be up front, so it would define, I don't understand why it's in the back.
Oh, the glossary, you mean?
Yeah, because it really says there's voters, the voters shall mean registered voters at the town of town. So if that were up front, like we have it at the town meeting, we have to.
In the booklet, they're all in
Yeah, I don't
front,
see
yeah.
any problem with
Yeah, so
that.
I think this should be up front to define the meetings, and then you don't have to constantly
Refer back to the glossary.
Definition of terms
Yeah,
prior to
yeah.
the book as opposed to a glossary.
Moving glossary up front and or adding registered voters.
Yes,
211.
I think that's a good point.
It should be citizens and registered voters. But
Yeah.
Jim, can I make a general comment?
Sure, go ahead.
Now I gotta remember what I was gonna say. So in these kinds of documents, they're very stylized and linked together, and often the wording is very specific and narrowly tailored for a purpose. So just as something to think about as we read this and go through it, that sometimes you can have unintended consequences in tinkering with definitions without even knowing it.
And so that's why I think that's a good point, Brian. And so that's why I think tonight, none of this is being, let's go ahead and change it and bring it to town meeting. This is, I'm jotting down all these notes of every recommendation, and that's when we go back and see, whether or not this was intended to say this, or is there consequences for changing that? Is there Mass General Law that says we're completely prohibited? We're probably not going to know most of those questions now, so I'm jotting down all the recommendations, and then I can come back to you guys and say, this is a no-go, or this is still a question, or let's talk about this further.
Almost like a brainstorming session,
Mhm.
throwing a bunch
Yeah.
of things out.
Mhm.
That's a good idea.
So, the 222, we've discussed some, it looks like improving clarity with that language, so we can tinker with that. 231, so this one under committees, in general, subject to provisions of this charter and to such bylaws or other town meeting votes regarding committees as may be provided, the moderator shall appoint for fixed terms the members of such committees of the town meeting, special or standing, as may from time to time be established, other than those appointed by a vote of town meeting, in addition to such specific powers, duties and responsibilities as may be provided town meeting committee by bylaw or vote establishing. Each such committee, when acting within the scope of its authority, shall have a right to examine the pertinent records of any town agency or department and to consult with any town official, employee, or agent.
And I just think that's one we need to ask town council about, what does that mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think that there may be maybe there's a school building committee, something in the laws that say those have to be appointed
By
by.
the moderator.
I'm not sure, but I just don't ever recall anything like this ever happening. So I think we need to get some input from town council on that one.
I agree.
I think that was written by an attorney to generate funds for himself.
Get paid by the word.
You said it, Brian, I did.
So let's see, moving to 232, under Finance Committee, I think the question is really, why is the moderator appointing FinCom?
Yeah,
That was-
I wanted to understand, why is that a moderator? But, I see the paragraph before, I just wanted to understand.
I think that might be by statute.
Yeah, well, that's why I was asking. If that's a statute, then I just wanted to, it's fair enough.
So, yeah, and I do know, I was doing a little due diligence ahead of time, and, the moderator can be appointed, the FinCom can be appointed by the moderator. So, some towns do select board and some are actually elected, but I think you're right. I think depending on the size of the town, it's typically the moderator.
And I understand, I was thinking through that why I asked that question. There could be conflict of interest if the select board appointed the finance committee or the CFO did. You want to take that out, so the objective person most likely would be the moderator.
You vote in favor of my budget.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I get that. I just wanted to ask why.
And I don't know if that's necessarily fully the way it's done. I know my being brought to the FinCom 6 years ago or so I already knew Mike, but my car, actually someone said, why isn't she on the FinCom? And I was like, whoa, because no one asked me. And then that's where it spiraled out of hand from there.
So
Or I get appointed.
I think very similarly, question for 242 and 243. I think this is something that the question of who are these elected officials that are.
Yeah, what does that mean and when would that occur? I think that's another one for council.
Spell it out.
If it's still relevant or if it's something from 100 years ago that they did. You see that one, Larry? Does that make any sense to you?
242, you said?
Yeah, 242 and 243, really.
Well, I had a couple of comments on it, but. If it's elected officials, yeah, I don't know why that's in there either.
Yeah.
But on those two points, those two sections, we call the fall meeting a special town meeting. And as you can see there, in section 5, special town meeting is actually separate from the first 242 and 243. And the reason that is because special town meetings have it's a totally different connotation, and it's called, it's a special meeting that's called for a specific purpose. And we really shouldn't be calling the November meeting a special town meeting, because there's different requirements when you're having a special town meeting, in particular the warrant and how much in advance it has to be posted and so on and so forth. So it's really, we have a spring annual town meeting
And fall
annual town meeting.
So it's really not an adjustment to the charter, but more of our nomenclature for
Correct.
what we do.
How we post it.
Okay.
But I mean, as I said, it does have a meaning that we're not following. If we're gonna call it a special town meeting, we have to do it in a
Yeah.
different way.
I always wonder why we call that special. There's
Yeah,
nothing
'cause we have
special
to-
about
yeah,
it.
I think we stopped calling it that for that specific reason. Didn't mean to follow and
but
call it
it's-
something.
This last fall, we did. 'cause
We
I-
did call it a special town meeting.
But the finance committee still does, like,
Yeah.
I tried to correct it as much as I could last time, but they still try to refer to it that way.
And just quickly, right back over to 241. I don't think there's any issue with that, but having 2 town meetings seems to work out well for the town.
Well, because the way the charter is written here, you don't have your free cash certified by your spring town meeting, so you need the second town meeting for your capital.
And it used to be years ago where people we'd have, if you go back in the records, we'd have 4 or 5 special town meetings in a year just because they would just call throughout the year. So that's when the charter came about. They said, let's try and get everything organized in 2 meetings. That should be plenty unless it's an emergency. So
Yeah.
you're exactly right.
Yep.
The idea of the fall is once free cash is certified.
Yeah.
And there aren't just willy-nilly. And plus people can plan, okay, I know there's going to be one in May and I know there's going to be one in November.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, Jim.
So moving to section 7, initiation of warrant articles, unless anyone else has any comments from above. I see Mary had made a comment, the Board of Selectmen shall insert all lawful petitions. The way this requires that all, that petition be included.
Yeah, I think when it talks to lawful, I think what they're referring to is submitted with the number of petition signatures.
Right.
So, I'm not sure what the general laws say about, whether or not the selectmen have to include it. If it's 10 registered voters for an annual town meeting, or I think it's 100 for a special, I think it's required. So we'll have to talk to Mary about what her, she's here. Yeah.
I'm here. So this one comes from a little bit of experience in my community where we've had occasions where some residents have developed petitioned articles, and if they've met the requirements of the petition itself, meaning the number of required signatures, and it was submitted in time, et cetera, it met all of the requirements to be included on the warrant, then the petitioners have challenged that their articles should in fact be included on the warrant. The problem is that we had a couple of instances where the articles that they were trying to include were actually articles that were just in and of themselves unlawful. They were trying to do something that was contrary to statute, and yet they continued to challenge town council and the Board of Selectmen to have those articles heard at town meeting anyway. It's been a very strange situation. It's happened more than once. And so when I see that a petitioned article, you guys handle your petitioned articles a little bit differently than I'm used to, because they do go through boards and committees for review. My experience is petitioned articles are usually untouched and just left to town meeting, and boards don't weigh in on them. So it may not be an issue here for Bellingham, but that's sort of why I was asking it, because I have this experience that's sort of sometimes nonsensical.
So Mary, what you're basically saying is we could likely add some language that the petition must be reviewed by the Board of Selectmen before it's added to the warrant or approved by.
Yeah, something to
It
that.
doesn't state that here. It doesn't say, so maybe it's something we do add or run it by council to make sure that we have that control in place, but let's make sure it's written in the charter. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
That gives the Board of Selectmen the authority to reject it based on a certain set of regulations.
Oh, we can identify that by saying if it's an unlawful petition. But if they want to bring something up, the town should, but if it's unlawful, then no. Well,
I think that we really need to give that some careful thought, because that could open the door and could be a very slippery slope to giving the board wide discretion and creating, in an effort to discourage disputes and to define things, and actually making it much more convoluted, because that word lawful can mean a lot of different things.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, okay.
We also have to check, or have council check the general law, because I'm not sure that you can actually put that in. I mean, it may be customary here, and that's how it's done, but I'm not sure that you can actually put that in there.
Okay. Moving on.
All right, let's see here. So referrals, 272, the Board of Selectmen shall immediately upon signing cause a copy of the warrant shall to be delivered. Yeah, just that's it. It's a clerical issue adding to the chairperson. Makes sense. 273 notification. So this is an interesting one. So Mary asked, can you use a more modern means of publication instead of the local newspaper? So I know that's Mass General Law, right, for the paper. But yeah, but I know that there was legislation that was trying to attack this for all hearing notices that could be published in a central registry online. And what I think the end result was just another layer of notification. They kept all the newspaper requirements, but said, you should be posting it online as well. So, I mean, we could certainly make note of, something to the effect of we require it in online as well. But I think that local paper has to.
That's a spec.
So the law does say special town meeting has to be publicized.
I believe so, but again.
Yeah, the tricky part of that is one, most people aren't checking for, but the other one is, we have so few special town meetings. It's one of those things that slips through the crack, and all of a sudden you've held a meeting that isn't valid because you didn't publish it, anything could be challenged. So if it's required, it's required, but if it's not required, maybe whenever a special town meeting, maybe it's suggested as opposed to required, because you hold a special town meeting and handle a matter, maybe once every, I don't even know how often we did one for the marijuana dispensary.
I was just gonna say, that's the only one I remember since I.
It's just a matter of making sure between the town clerk and the selectmen and everyone else that we remember that requirement.
And you can add other ways of notifying the community. We've seen it plenty of times between reverse calls or posting places, but by making it mandatory that you have those as well, you're also opening yourself up to more points of failure.
And it's only for a special town meeting, not the fall town meeting, not the spring town meeting. So that's where it's really tricky. If it was every single one, then you'd know. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, right, because if you're calling a fall town meeting a special
Special.
town meeting, it's
We
not
have it,
published
though.
in the
Yeah.
paper.
We've
then
gotten that determination because our charter does not call it a special town meeting.
Yeah.
So we've actually had that, but I understand what you're saying. I mean, if people are calling it that, or it's published that way, it could be an issue.
Right.
All right. Moving on
That's
to
what we run into it.
Section 8, availability of town officials at town meetings. Have you had any issues with this one? It seems like a pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Section 9, clerk of the meeting. Larry, you got anything?
No, I mean, it's consistent with Mass General Law.
Moving on to elected officials, Article 3. So, right, so 311 talks about these are the groups that are elected. Looking over that list, pretty much all of them are Mass General Law that it's elected. Town clerk is the only one that's there. It's not mandatory. I mean, obviously through our charter it is, but so that would be the only one, to Mary's point, that really is up for discussion. And 313, elected town officials shall receive such compensation for their services as may be appropriated.
May receive instead of shall receive.
Yeah.
Is that in case somebody wants to not take the payment or something?
Or
So honestly, a couple of my board members have opted or tried to opt not to receive it for, I guess, tax implications or something, but yeah, I don't know, switching shall to may might give some discretion that.
I think it's legal. Hey, Brian, legally, is the difference between shall and may?
It's very different.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's very different.
Yeah.
What is a town official? Is that different from a town employee? Like, Dennis, are you a town official?
I believe I am.
Yeah, so I would,
Yeah, I I don't know what the true definition is, but I think it's anybody, right, that works.
yeah, so I think it prevents people from a board saying, you know what? You can be the whatever you want to be, but I'm not paying you for it. So I think it's to make sure that positions are funded. I don't know what the harm is to keeping it a shall.
Okay, let's move on.
It's not just in any employee though, because it's in that glossary in the back.
There you go.
well, it's elected town officials.
Yeah.
So like town administrator is not elected.
Yeah.
Somebody
So
still-
You're appointed.
Where I was going with that is just, there are certain communities who have proposed eliminating stipends for elected board positions. And so I just wanted to sort of highlight that. And I don't know if that's in conflict, if somebody was proposing that, you know, they, in the future, were going to eliminate stipends for certain positions. That if the charter says they shall receive compensation, then that may preclude them from performing that kind of a function.
Even though Mary says.
Mary, I look at it a little differently. With the word may in there, it puts the discretion on people.
Mhm.
May or may not, depending how we like your board, what you've done. I think shall makes it a little tighter and less ambiguous.
Yeah.
You know, may means it doesn't have to happen.
Change it to shall, change to will.
And it also, as Dennis was saying, it as may be appropriated. So as long as it's appropriated, it shall be, you shall have compensation.
Yeah.
All right. So we're moving along here. So this is the select board changing it, you know, as Mass General Law, like they are the licensing board. Shall appoint town administrator. Other appointments as specified by Mass General Law or this charter. Let's see. Let's see, unless noted elsewhere in this charter, the terms of office of all appointments made by the Board of Selectmen shall be as currently specified by Mass General Law, by this charter, or by the bylaw or town meeting. So talking about term limits for committee chairperson, what would you refer to it in this section, you think, or?
I'm not sure. I'm just thinking in general, there should be term limits. It's just my thought on, you know, who the chairperson of each of the boards, either elected or appointed.
I had the same comment, but even more broad than that, not even just limiting it to the chairperson, but even should there be term limits in general for?
Given how difficult it is to get people who.
Yeah.
That might be
I know,
difficult. Yeah. And if we have boards that are very capable and done a great job, I'd hate to just say, okay, we have to turn you over and bring in new people. And then you look at something like Conservation Commission in general, I think of that. I mean, that's a very difficult job. Zoning, there's a lot to learn. And then if you turn a board like that over to newbies and obviously you alternate, you know, but it may be challenging. But I was just thinking in terms of the chairperson.
That might be difficult too, because egos. You say to someone, you can stay on the board, but I'm the chairman, not everybody. First of all, not a lot of people
Want to be it.
want to, everyone's like sliding back, hoping they
Yeah.
keep.
Yeah.
And if you get rid of, sometimes if you get rid of that person that has been a great asset for the town, they may not stay on a committee either. And I've seen that on board
It
of
is a slippery
directors.
slope. Oh, yeah, it is a slippery slope, that's for sure.
The only
Can I
other
ask a
thing,
question? For the most boards, don't they vote in the chairperson? Because I know on the library trustees, that's what we do. We see who wants to be the chairperson for the next year, and that's how we do it. I don't know how other boards do it.
Same way.
Same way. It's the same way. But sometimes you see in certain boards, it's the same chairperson year over year over year because, they've made it known they want to be the chair. So people don't want to ruffle feathers. They sit back and they don't challenge. So if you had term limits, it takes that uneasiness out of the conversation.
But you also run the risk of not being able to have.
Yeah, you do. It is a risk.
All right, so we can leave that in there.
Yeah,
to
it's
have
a
more
discussion.
on. Yep. All right, next one, town moderator, this is as Mass General Law. It says no for our school committee, just seeing if there's any updates or anything that's necessary. I can reach out to Peter Morano and Agreed and see if there's anything there, see if we need to invite them in at all. Let's see. So down to section 5, town clerk. Mary makes mention of, Larry is the records access officer of the town. Should we formally include that in the charter? I don't, the AG says it has to be somebody at the town, right? It's not necessarily the town clerk, I believe.
Correct.
Right, so you were just handed it though.
We do it by department anyway.
So each department has their own records officer.
Yes, it's an optional type of thing, but I think, do you not you couldn't remember if the law specifically required an individual to be ultimately responsible. No?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
So I do recall a few years back, they said you're supposed to designate someone.
Yeah.
And I believe at that time.
Yeah,
We designated Larry.
That's what. Yeah,
Congratulations.
Everyone else step back.
Because typically most of the requests, or I shouldn't say typically, but a lot of times they come in and you're able to funnel them out to whoever the appropriate agency.
Yeah, that's basically how it operates now. It goes to Larry and Larry says, hey, Jim, do you have those documents? Or,
Actually, a lot of them are mine anyway, so.
It's probably a good idea.
yeah.
One thing I wanted to add to that is that, and this is statutory, that the town clerk is also the clerk of the Board of Registrars.
so can I make another general comment? In my mind, that this is kind of like, it's the kind of the town's constitution, and it shouldn't be varied frequently or very, it should be big picture. If there's other ways to designate who the record person is, then maybe it's not something that really falls into a charter. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things and a lot of tinkering we could do, but I think the less tinkering we do, the better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Brian, because down the road, if we're not all here and we're wondering who the records officer, and, we're constantly going back to the charter, I would think that would be a burden. And I'm not really saying the way I want to, but thinking down the road a little bit, it's not always going to be the town clerk that's going to be the records officer. It could be somebody else. And by identifying it in the charter as the town clerk, it basically says the town clerk now has that responsibility. So by putting it in there, it defines it. We should probably not put it in there. Is that what you're saying, Brian?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot of good ideas to put, to clarify,
Yeah,
that makes sense for the moment. But this is sort of a high-level document that should just speak generally about structures and processes and the less tinkering, just like the Constitution. Well, yeah, it should be difficult to change and not change frequently.
All right, section 6, the planning board, Kelly makes mention of the associate member, and actually that's something that I would love to clean up. It's Bill and Brian know the associate member is actually hidden in the special permit criteria for zoning bylaws. So if we could take that out of that zoning bylaws and drop it into planning board setup, I think that would be appropriate.
And I know they're not, associate members aren't elected, we typically appoint them, but, and I know this falls under elected, but I'm like, we interview associate members, they should be in there somewhere, because they have to go through kind of the same process, was my thinking. I could be wrong, I'm not on the planning board, but that was my thought on that.
Jim, that's an interesting question for the zoning board too. Like I know that at least for appointed people on the zoning board, their appointments come up periodically, but do the associate members on the zoning board have their appointments also come up?
The associate member, yes. I can't recall now the makeup of that, but yeah, they do.
what are their terms in associate and annual?
It might be phrased as annual.
I think it is.
actually
I remember it coming up before us a few different times. It seems like it's annual.
Yeah, so Bill, Brian, I don't know if you have any comments on that one, but I vividly recall when I first came here, looking for where the heck is the associate member and finding it in the zoning bylaws, which maybe it doesn't belong in the charter perhaps, but it certainly needs to be moved from
It
our
belongs
zoning
somewhere.
bylaws.
Okay.
All right, moving
Um,
on. Oh, yep.
Question?
Yes. I see subdivision underlined.
They don't like the spelling.
It makes it confusing,
That's just spell check, Bill.
That's spell check, yeah.
but I just, again, a subdivision in a development, you're gonna have two different terminologies. It does get confusing. You follow me, Brian?
No, I think that's a good point, but I think that's a necessary word there. I think that follows the statute
Okay,
of what planning boards do.
Yeah, Mass General Law for subdivisions. I believe it's silent on site plans actually, on development plans. All right, Board of Library Trustees, I don't know if there's anything we should be aware of for updating in that regard.
Looks good to me.
Good. All right, Constables, Housing Authority. Yep.
Constables.
Oh, Constable, yep.
I think we need to check Master Law on that, but first of all, we have 4 constables. And they really don't do any of what is in 30-8-2. All they do is go. And I think that's kind of, is misleading in a way. And do we really need 4? But I don't know, it may be required, so.
All right, what do they do for the town? They notice,
They serve the warrant.
They post the warrants. That's all they're gonna do.
But
that's,
can't they legally be hired by people to serve notices? So I think that's why towns have constables though, so that if you want to have something sent to somebody and served, you'd call up the town and say, who are the constables? And you'd call a constable and they would do that.
But it also says that they have the powers of sheriffs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we need to
That's
find
scary.
out what the deal
It's
is.
a
with that.
little scary.
Yeah,
Brian, you should know the constables well by now. How many times They come to serve?
Yeah, they come to serve me all the time.
So we need to find out about the powers of sheriffs, so we don't have them going around with.
We don't
Throw
have.
balls
sheriff.
on there.
They don't need Barney Fife running around town.
Barney Fife.
We don't have a sheriff.
Warrants or other stuff.
No.
No,
We have a
Florida
county
Florida.
sheriff. Yeah, we do.
All right. Housing authority? Anybody?
Yeah, I have a question here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, at one point, I thought a member had to be appointed by the state.
Yeah, one does have to be appointed by. the
Is that still correct?
Yes, we need to change that, and then.
We also need to have one person. Larry, do we have to have one person as a member of a president of a housing authority?
But that's gonna take place not this election, but our next election.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't the state appointee, the fifth member shall be appointed as provided by NGLA?
That's what it says here.
Oh, okay. That's the
Okay.
fifth.
Right, that's the fifth
appointee, right?
member. Four are elected by
Right.
voters and the fifth is.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure.
But we have to clarify it with this new law. It says that one needs to be a tenant, and it's unclear as to how that person's gonna be elected.
When did that law come into effect?
It was actually passed in 2014, and they just let it lay fallow for a long time. And then the governor signed it, chapter 358 of the Acts of 2020.
Okay,
Um,
so it wasn't enacted until
And we
2020.
just were lucky that we didn't have to do it this year because we fell right just before it was required.
Okay.
So in fact, after May 31st, it's going to be required. So our next one up will have to be a tenant. But they haven't
Do you see
figured
that
out
being a
exactly
problem?
How it's going to be elected.
Do you see that being an issue? You do? Okay.
Because we don't always have tenants that want to do it.
Yeah.
And the other question is, and it remains a question, is who's going to oversee that election?
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be the tenants that put up.
That do
forward
the
this
election,
person.
right?
So it may not be on our ballot at all.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Very good.
Yeah.
So we should, maybe put a little poll over at the center.
Maybe.
Okay, moving on.
All right, Blackstone Valley, anything should be thinking about here? Should we reach out to Blackstone, see if there's anything?
I think if you're gonna reach out to Peter, maybe it's worthwhile to reach out to them if
Yeah.
there's any changes.
We could talk to our rep,
Yep.
Joe Hall, and see if he has, just reviews it.
Okay.
That being said, if we're gonna look at Blackstone Valley as a district school, should we not be looking at the charter school as a district
It's
school?
not a district school, though. Blackstone Valley, we own a portion of. We
Okay.
don't own anything with regard to
They
charter
describe
schools.
themselves as district.
Yeah, they are a district, but they're not owned, they're not under
They're
our
state funded, not by town.
responsibility. Yeah.
Okay,
Blackstone Valley, we own 1/13 of, in
Yeah.
essence, yeah.
couple desks in the chair.
Yeah. And about $1 million.
Yeah, I know, I saw the budget.
All right.
I don't know what they would really change here. I mean, this is our charter, not theirs, so.
Well, yeah, I think maybe it's just anything that the state has adjusted over time.
Yeah, okay.
That's what much of this is probably going to be, if we looked at the charter 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. And so, yeah, much of this is going to be anything that the state has updated that we need to make whole
Okay.
and agree with. Moving along, section 11, recall provisions.
I have a question about that. It goes back to the housing authority and kind of convoluted way. About 12 years ago, we had a director that we had some concerns about. We asked for a vote of confidence, and the vote of confidence passed. And she was removed from office. After the vote of confidence was taken and she knew she was being removed, she indicated that if the vote of confidence had failed, she at that point was going to ask for a vote of confidence against those two board members who put that motion into play to have them removed from the board. So I think somehow we should indicate that the only way a person can be removed from a board is a recall or something to that effect. When you get down at the housing authority, it gets very muddy at times and confrontational. And I don't want to see someone put in that situation again, where a director thought they could have two members removed by a simple vote of confidence.
I don't know how we put that in here.
I don't know either.
Yeah,
Okay. You can look at it though.
yeah.
But a vote of confidence,
Means no confidence.
but who was doing the voting?
The board.
The board would have been doing the voting.
But this is a recall election. This
Yeah,
is the
this is-
public.
I understand. But we need to think of a way so that it couldn't happen to other boards, what happened there.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with section 11. That would be something, an added section if we were to do that. It wouldn't be in the section.
Yeah.
Separate.
You can look up the topic in general too, though. Okay. All right, moving along. Let's see, recall election through 311.3. There's the number of voters. Nomination of candidates, any officers whose recall is sought may be. Okay. Anything there?
Actually, really all based on.
That's
Yeah.
what I assume. Yeah, the section 42 chapter 4. All right, moving on to town administrator.
Would it be, I know it's all law, but it would be important to check if the propositions on ballot 311.5 just be checked with the government to make sure there's been no changes in that.
Which one? Sorry.
311.5.
311.5. Oh, sure. Okay. Just make sure it hasn't been updated at all.
It's been 10 years.
So let's see, updating town administrator section. So I just put in a note just to match DPW's language, shall be a person especially fitted by education, training, or previous experience to perform the duties of office. Probably not necessary, but
It doesn't say that.
I didn't see it in there, no. It's yours was, or the town administrator was educated or
Professional experience, yeah.
a bachelor's degree and accredited degree of university or professional experience shall include previous full-time compensated services, but
They had to water it down last.
yeah. It just matches all the other, the higher level.
Makes sense.
I like the DPW language, Jim, that you suggested.
Residency requirement has always been a tricky item. The board can waive it. When I first came here, I lived in Uxbridge for 2 years, and the board waived it for those 2 years, so they can waive it. But the problem is, it can limit your pool of candidates if you're saying you need to move to that town, and if you don't, I mean, if you get the job, so you come to town, you have a 3-year contract, you move your family there, oftentimes people are applying from who knows where.
Mhm.
So I think it may be one to take a look at.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe the advantage of that has gone away as our world has shrunk, so to speak.
Mhm.
Yeah, plus you're limiting the pool of candidates.
Right.
Yeah, no.
You really
There's no
Right.
question.
Yeah, and that's why I added that. I'm not really sure.
Not
In
that
my
position.
opinion.
It was important
residency
30
requirement.
years ago, a smaller town, people
Right.
wanted to make sure that you're vested in, I've enjoyed living in town, but
Yeah.
if you put it out there, I know a lot of my peers would shy away from a community that has a residency requirement.
Mhm.
Because they don't want to uproot their family. They may 2 or 3 years after they have the job and find it's a good fit. Otherwise, you could be moving every 3 or 4 years.
Right.
Mhm.
Dennis, do you know if there's other towns around here that don't have the residency requirement?
I don't know if there are any towns around here that do have it.
Yeah,
Okay,
In
Yeah,
Medfield definitely
yeah.
does not.
I would check because the town administrators that I know in the area, none of them live, Blackstone is the only one I can think of. And they typically, the administrators that I've known that live there actually got apartments. The latest one included, it had an apartment in Blackstone and commuted on the weekends back home to Springfield. So all the other towns I know of, Michael Boynton is the town administrator in Medway.
Medway,
Medway,
yeah.
Bellingham. Jamie Hellman's the town administrator of Franklin. He lives out towards Worcester that way. So most don't, I would say.
okay, thank you.
30 years ago, it was the other way around, but times have changed.
I don't see, especially with the, like, say the world is flat with technology the way it is, there's
Yeah.
really no reason to make it a residency requirement.
All right.
Hey,
It has to
Jim?
be changed.
Yep.
Can I just ask a quick question? And I missed the beginning, so I apologize, and maybe you guys sort of in general sense addressed this, but do we need to pay any care and attention to the gender specificity of pronouns? So it's,
There's a whole section in there about it, Mary.
okay,
In the, I think actually in the glossary. So if we move that to the front, like we were saying, then it would.
okay, good. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No,
Sorry, I didn't
good
mean
point.
to-
No, it's fine.
I'm sorry.
No, you didn't. This is open.
See,
Hmm.
powers and duties, 421, town administrator shall appoint and remove, civil service law or strong chiefs law. As I know you guys have been talking about civil service, maybe now is not the time, but
I think it's something we talk about, and I
Yeah.
think for some of these things, like we have the police chief come in and have a conversation, on some of these things, like the civil service, strong chiefs law. I think it was put in there for a reason. Civil service, I think it's worth a conversation anyway.
I agree.
down. So, okay, so this is kind of similar to, sorry, we're at section 429B, I believe it is. And maybe this isn't necessary, but I just make note of it, kind of like the RAO. We have a procurement officer technically, and I believe Don is the designated procurement officer.
Yeah, so it says that I have it, but I also have the right to direct and appoint, and so I gave it to Don a long time ago, because Don does the majority of
But that makes
procurement.
sense.
Yeah,
Right.
although I can see why it might be here, but Don does the majority of the procurement, so he's the most up to speed with it. But I think it's one of those things that maybe Brian was talking about earlier, just a little too specific for something like this.
Well, and just a question, I feel like Mike Roach is the procurement person for the
For
school,
the schools,
isn't he?
exactly. he is.
So that doesn't, this one states that the procurement
Right.
officer is responsible for all of that educational materials for schools and book supplies, et cetera. So that's actually not the case if
Consistent,
it's
yeah.
done, yeah.
So it may be something that just needs to come out, because it's, at one point in time, I was the procurement officer and had to go and, do all the training, et cetera. But the amount that I procure as opposed to what Don does, it seems every meeting he's got 3
Mhm.
contracts that are awarded.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
So perhaps it's either making it very big and broad or because it does specify 30B, but.
Or shall designate a.
Or shall designate a procurement
or just
office.
remove
And
altogether.
it could be more than one too, right?
Which would make sense.
It
Have
would
one
make
for,
sense. So
you know.
you say, it may be one or more as required by, something, some language to add there.
Then can I go back for a moment?
Sure.
Same thing should apply for complete inventory of all property of the town, both real and personal. That should be the responsibility of the procurement officer or officers.
Well, actually, what happens, Bill, is the finance office does that annually. Mary, is that a requirement under the law? Because I know that's how we fulfilled it in the past as far as that town inventory of property requirement. Is that something your offices maintain? Yeah.
I would think they'd have to fix assets with depreciation and everything else.
Exactly.
Right?
You just beat me to the punch, Don. Yes, it's
Yeah.
it's part of our annual audit.
Right.
Required to have that, yeah.
So although it says the town administrator is responsible for it, it's another one of those things.
Well,
that it's more responsible.
you
making
are.
Sure it happens.
You're
Right.
not, that's exactly right. You make sure it happens. You have people that do this work for you. You're not gonna do all this.
Okay, that's fine.
So let's see, so I made specific, so under section 5, specific appointments, I just recommended maybe some language for and periodically updating, because we have a list of who the town administrator appoints, and if you see that list, it doesn't quite reflect the makeup of the departments. So if we could maybe just add something about periodically updating. All right, moving along. Administrative organization. So let's see, 515. This is for consolidating or abolishing any town agency in whole or part. So this is still under town administrator may. It's a comment of the select board should play a role in that.
I think it talks in terms of that, doesn't it, at some point?
This sounds like a very specific thing. Seems like it comes from somewhere for a very specific reason.
English law.
Yeah, I'll dig up where the origin of it, but yeah, I think Brian's right. I think that's probably there. I bet you'll find it in every town charter. All right. Let's see. Publication of administrative code and personnel plan.
That's one I think. Staffing plan is prepared by the town administrator in conformity with our fourth section. It's another one of those I think we need to take a look at, because it's not something that, we have, pretty much everybody's a part of a collective bargaining group now.
Right.
And the merit principle is another one that's kind of,
Yes.
So would that be something?
I think it's something we should talk about whether or not it's something that we would include in a charter.
I don't think it should be. Can I tell you why? Based on the language we have right now, it says all appointments for town officials and employees shall be made solely on merit and fitness demonstrated. That means we're controlling the school department too? Doesn't that want to be carved out somehow?
And for some people agree with it, some people wouldn't, but when you have unions, people are promoted oftentimes on the basis of seniority. It's just unfortunate, but
I know it's gonna be a slippery slope, but
Yeah.
we should look at it.
So would this be something where, I mean, we definitely look at it, but would this be something where it's another broader thing where the town shall have a personnel plan, and whether that's each is in a union or not, but, yeah, I think it is certainly worthy of having something in there about a personnel plan. All right, so moving down to the
Yeah.
DPW, I think now's a great time to get Don's input on all this. We've only got 2 more years or so to pick his brain, so anything he thinks needs to be updated through DPW, now's a good time for that.
Okay, can we schedule him to come in?
Yep. All right, and likewise with section 5, I know Mary's on the line, but maybe giving her some time to digest it and look at it. I'm sure there's a lot of things she would want to perhaps improve upon from the charter. I don't know, Mary, if you had any early broad comments.
No, I'd rather do it in whole.
Okay,
So I think you've got me scheduled for a future meeting.
Yep. We'll do you and Don a separate night, so we don't have all the excitement.
yeah, we'll be here all night.
All right. So same thing with inspectional department. I thought, I think Tim's on the line, but maybe having Tim come in and we can chat about, I know he's been looking at his department and things that may be able to be improved upon and how it's all structured. I know he's had a lot of good ideas, so maybe we could bring him in as well.
Can I ask a question about that? We can talk about it later, but 584, the Board of Health shall appoint a health agent. Is that statutory?
Yeah, that's Mass General Law. Yeah.
It's just strange to me that the board appoints the.
It's unique, right? It's the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only one, and yeah, I mean, they were at one time an elected board, obviously, until the charter was adopted, but my understanding is still, if we can double check it, but I believe that's the case that
So,
it is.
yeah, I could provide you guys with some more information, but I have done some looking into it, and you can, basically the alternative is upgrading to a health department, but there brings a lot of qualifications and requirements to that for that position, like a physician level health agent. But yeah, I can provide you guys with more information on that. Tree warden.
I have a question on that. The tree ward, does it have to be appointed by the town administrator? Can it come from the DPW? Isn't that more up their bailiwick?
I think what it is, Bill, is all positions are appointed by the town administrator.
Okay,
Yeah, I work with the departments, but
I would
all appointed.
imagine, Jen, you'd take input from Don or others before you make an appointment.
okay.
A lot of times, departments come to me with who they've interviewed and
Yeah.
offer their recommendation. I haven't even sat in on the interviews. And ultimately, my appointments are ratified by the Board of Selectmen, so.
Can you just go back up there for 1 second? I thought I saw something at the planning board. Okay. Okay, that's fine.
It's just Jim's cursor.
Oh, no, the planning board is for scenic road.
Seen it,
So
right?
we,
Oh, there we go.
so we're required to touch base with everyone for any tree removal on a scenic road.
That's ongoing. That's taking place.
Right. All right, so more of Mary's expertise. All right, so under general provisions, Article 7. But it touches on the gender thing again here too. So this is where your periodic review of the bylaws.
You want to go outside?
Sure.
No, thanks.
Go.
Oh, Tim.
Let the poor dog out.
Sorry.
So I did have kind of a question about the periodic review of charter and bylaws. I actually kind of like it, how, well, I guess we could wait and see how this progresses, but I kind of like the whole charter bylaw combination. Getting a group together to do the charter and then waking them back up 2 years later, essentially, to do the bylaws. Doesn't seem the most efficient way to do it. I don't know. Maybe it's a wait and see how this process goes.
I think it's a great idea, and it gives more relevance to it. I don't know why the bylaw review committee, why there needs to be a bylaw review every 5 years either. It seems to me that the two of them could be done every
10 years.
Or sooner,
If
whatever mechanism we want to put in place. But
Well, I feel like the bylaws are more of what we see come to town meeting that people want to change. So obviously, the residents in town or whoever the case may be still have that ability
it's a fluid
to bring it
process.
to town meeting. So I think every 10 years to do the major review is fine, because that seems to me to be more fluid than the charter is.
And doing them together makes sense. It's tough enough to get committees together.
Yeah.
We'll torture them with both.
And I know the bylaw was just 5 or 6 years ago, and I think everyone who participated in that said, we really got to do this again. So yeah, maybe it is a 10-year thing.
I just wanted to put a plug in that the town clerk should be part of the committee. I don't understand how that happened, actually. That wasn't.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, town clerk probably didn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So, whoever it was 30 years ago.
All right, moving on to removals and suspensions. I believe this is mostly Mass General Law. Loss of office, excessive absence. Any comments on that? Does anyone have any issues with that?
Do we need to put anything in here regarding, I know it's Governor Baker's order is temporary, but thinking about these meetings in the future and the way we're going now, to me, we should have all of these meetings be available via public forum, via Zoom, so that, we don't get into a situation, the last review, I was traveling a great deal and I couldn't make the meetings, but had we had meetings like this, I would have been able to make the majority of the meetings.
That may be something we look at for a bylaw. That would
A bylaw, not in the charter, but in a bylaw. So just as a thought, I'd like to see that all of these meetings be public and be available via some, electronic media format. We don't want to identify Zoom because then you're stuck with Zoom.
Via the town website.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I necessarily agree with that for all meetings or boards and committees. I think if you want to be on the board or committee, you need to be able to commit to having the time to be in person and at meetings. We see how it is. It's, in my opinion, and I'm very much into the technology, social media. That's my niche, but there still isn't anything better than being in a room with other people.
But no, I hear what you're saying, but whether it's a bylaw or not, I think for the public's sake, not everybody has cable nowadays, and a lot of people are getting away from it with the Roku and everything else.
Yeah.
It gives them the ability to watch something streaming on a.
To have it available
to view.
For the public to Zoom, I think is fine.
Because the law's already in place to allow members to participate remotely as long as the majority, vote in the affirmative. But I think more importantly, just for the public's opportunity. I know for myself, I've never watched so many. I watch every meeting now.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it was a matter of coming in.
Yeah.
And the quality of access isn't great. So I think from that perspective, it's been good experience, but whether or not it needs to be a bylaw or whatever, we can talk about, you know, what's right.
I'm just thinking, down the road, that's
Yeah.
all. And I look at just 50% of the meetings. I think it should stay here, but I don't want to change it, but I think they should also be able to attend them electronically if they're traveling or something along those lines. Who knows, but I'm just saying, who knows?
I agree with you, Don. If you're on vacation or something, and we've been Zooming for so long, it's become very efficient, and members should have that option.
Well, vacation's one
I'm
thing.
not expecting you to come to a meeting if you're on vacation.
No, I know you're not. No, but and as an example, when I use myself as that person, my job was fine. I was here, and then all of a sudden my job changed, and I had to travel. And I said to Jim, maybe I should step down. No. It'll work itself out. Had I been able to attend, via Zoom, I would have attended many more of those meetings. But I can't attend them when I'm in California or whatever. But I certainly could have attended the meetings. So that's all I'm saying. And I think, we run into Dan from time to time now. He's traveling more. So, he's been able to make all of the select board meetings. Otherwise he wouldn't, because he's on the road now more. So I'm just saying, I just think, with the technology that we have, I think this works. I'm home, so I'm here. Otherwise, unless I was sick, I'd be at home.
I certainly don't mind participating via Zoom if I'm on vacation.
Well, if I'm on vacation, I'm not participating.
Okay.
I'll get killed.
You would, couldn't you leave that up to the boards to make that decision on their own bylaws?
Actually, that's the case now. The
Yeah.
law says that, towns, boards can vote to have remote participation if they so choose. I don't think you can vote, but you can participate is the way the law is written now.
But we can definitely, I'm sure the state is probably going to be updating theirs too.
I'm sure they will.
All this going on, so we can definitely look at that. All right, moving on to Article 8, other provisions. Continuation of existing laws. Taking effect. A list of, through organization, the Board of Selectmen shall appoint. The only thing I would say for some of these is maybe adding to what we have here. I think maybe the selectmen are fine. I think maybe there's been some other.
Interrupt you?
Yep.
It's bugging me about the Board of Health and the health agent. It's bothering me that the Board of Health has the power, complete power, to appoint the health
I
agent.
think it's by statute.
But can you look? I have nothing against the Board of Health.
Yeah.
It's really bothering. It's like, then there's 3 of them, and they get appointed. The Board of Health gets appointed, right? They're not elected in the town.
Right.
So to me, there could be a conflict of interest. It could be a number of things. So I just want to look at that piece, if you
Yeah, we'll
could.
get to, I downloaded it maybe about a year ago.
It's nothing against our current board by me bringing this up. It has nothing to do with the current board. It's so different than everything else we have in town.
Just one other thing.
It's 1 year, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the tree warden who's,
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, Board of Health.
Yeah, the health agent gets a 1-year term.
Jim on it, 822. I'm not looking at it. No, I'm looking at the current version. Yeah, just I thought we got away. The bylaw, I think, does not require that we hold the annual town meeting on the 4th Wednesday in May. Does it, Larry?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so I think we need to change that
Yeah,
to
we need to change
be
that.
consistent with the bylaws. The bylaws say, I think, in April, May, or June, or whatever it says.
Yeah.
Same thing with the town elections, Larry, or should we keep that right where it is? Yeah. Yeah, okay.
I did have a question under C for the appointments. I actually had spoken with a couple of select board members about the Board of Registrars. If you remember, Don, I specifically.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
And it is consistent with Mass General Law for the town clerk to make that appointment. And the reason that I think it's first of all, there's a whole procedure that is supposed to take place. and it's done via the town committees within the town. And there's also a balance that has to be kept, and that's why it's done in conjunction with the town committees. But I'm not sure that people quite understand what the Board of Registrars is about. And it's making appointments sometimes just because the people are there or whatever. And since I've been on board, I have been going through the town committees. It wasn't always like that. So we're getting more people that are interested in it. And they go against, the town committee will put forward maybe 3 or 4 people. And then those people are interviewed and selected. So I would like people to at least think about that, you know, the town clerk obviously is the clerk of that board and knows exactly what they're looking for, what the requirements are, and so on and so forth. So I'm just putting that out there.
So, and the clerk, we don't have a spot for the clerk appoints, right? So we would need to just add that. That's
So
all.
the only other person that the clerk is ostensibly appoints is the assistant
The
town clerk.
assistant town clerk, right?
But
Larry,
that's-
what does the board do?
Pardon?
Yeah, explain, what does the Board of Registrars do?
It depends. It depends on how much we use them. Now, I've been using them quite a bit, and they help a lot with the elections, because the elections have not, you know, gone from a one-day deal to a couple-week deal each time. They will fill in and help with the registration. They'll come in and help with actually the poll workers. And you can kind of interchange them with the poll workers. There's some duties that they can do and there's some that they cannot do, but I try to use them to the maximum, and we have been successful with that. And at the end of the night, when we're doing the count, they are also available to count, particularly the write-in votes and any of the votes that are not captured by the tabulators. So they have been very helpful. I mean, when I first became, when I was first on the Board of Registrars, they did next to nothing. But you know, I've been trying to get everybody more involved, and it's worked out well.
Isn't the intent for there to be a balanced participation in the election process between the political parties?
Right,
So there's the same number of Republican
that's correct.
registrars as Democratic, right? So the intent is to make sure that there's equal representation
yeah.
between.
And the other thing is that that's another issue with the assistant town clerk, because in the clerk's absence, the assistant town clerk would become the clerk of the Board of Registrars. But it's not allowed if it throws off the balance. So yet another reason why.
So
I feel
really
the way I
the
do about the
assistant
assistant
town
clerk
clerk and
position.
the town clerk should be of the same party affiliation,
Yes,
so that
yes.
if you're absent, then it doesn't
But
throw
but
off
all
the
that has
balance.
gone by the wayside because it's a union position, so we have to adjust it differently.
And that happened years
Interesting.
ago.
It happened years ago, but it should have not happened.
Yeah. Now, if they'd followed the charter, it wouldn't have
There was no
happened.
charter.
There was no charter when that happened,
That
Dennis?
goes back to when the union formed.
But if
Oh,
they-
okay.
Yeah.
But if
Okay,
they would have followed Mass General Law, it wouldn't have happened. Because it's in there that it's stated specifically that way.
yeah, but that's something that can't be changed now, unfortunately. I don't know how that could be possibly changed. Change that from a union position to a non-union position, that would be a bit of a challenge. But that's not for us to discuss now. It's a separate
Right.
discussion.
Can I raise a question, please? I think we're long gone the time the town needs a sexton.
Where is this section? I
Asia.
know what they are in
For
a
the
church.
cemetery?
I say, I know they're in church, but they're in the town.
Yeah, I didn't realize cemeteries had sextons.
It's a person who looks after a church, you know, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, oh, because probably when this charter, maybe cemeteries and churches went hand in hand, so that's where
Yeah,
the sexton
well,
came
they
up.
used to,
Yeah, they
years
Yeah.
ago,
they used to actually be owned by.
the church, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a statutorily defined term somewhere.
Could be.
Yeah, why do we have it? We don't need it.
We'll take a look.
While you're on there, is there a reason why the animal control officer is a one-year term? Is that statutory as well?
A lot of these are contractual, but the contract was formed around the appointment process. So the bylaw had it that way, and now it's part of the professional administrators. It basically spells out the terms of the contracts. I don't know how it first came into play, but there's only a handful that are 3-year appointments. The treasurer collector is a 3-year appointment. There's only a few.
But how does that work too? Because my understanding from our previous conversations on animal control is we buddy team with Franklin.
Yeah.
So is that, I mean, that seems like it would change some of this as well.
In what way?
Well, either from, is that what Franklin's agreed to? Is Franklin's on a 1 year?
The
or
employees are all Bellingham employees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're all
Okay.
our employees. Yeah. But, yeah, as far as the terms, like the health agent is 1 year. I don't know if it was by statute or how that came about initially, but I know the contracts with these positions reflect those terms.
Well, it's interesting too. You see workman's comp agent 1 year, and all of those type of agents are 1 year, right?
Yeah, and
So-
those are the ones the board is presented with every
Right,
year.
exactly.
Yeah.
Dennis, should the animal control say animal control and assistant animal control officers? Because they are all.
Yeah, it should. I agree.
So yeah, there's a few things like for instance, I don't believe conservation agents listed on here.
Right.
So there's a few things that maybe we need to add. Or, yeah, whatever.
It's kind of a catch-all under town administrator shall appoint.
Yeah.
Everybody else, yeah, everybody that's not mentioned here.
Yeah, that's what makes me think almost, you might want to say that instead of listing out each.
Try and list it out, yeah.
All right, and then last ones here is just Board of Health shall appoint, and I'll get you information on that. And then last is library trustees shall appoint the director, and I'm assuming that's Mass General Law.
Yeah. And all of the, I think, yeah, and other professional librarians.
Those are the Bernadette, Steve, who is the youth services librarian, and then Cecily, who's the reference librarian, and Amanda, who is the young adult librarian. So those 4 are contracted positions that we appoint every year.
Yeah, and the others are those are annual appointments too?
Yeah, it's annual appointments. Actually, I think it might even be a 3-year appointment, and we just do reviews every year. I have only been back on the board for less than a year, and we're just starting to get through that now.
The other positions are in the Ask Me unit.
No, so the 3 full-time positions are in the AFSCME, and then there's the part-timers. So there's only 3 AFSCME, and then Jim, the janitor, he's also in AFSCME, I believe.
Right, he is.
Yeah. So 4 contract, 4 AFSCME, and then the rest are part-time employees.
All right, so that's our first go at the charter there. So, I mean, I got a lot of homework that we can do. So what I was thinking, sorry with everybody, is so I'll take all those notes and I'll put it into that Google document. So just, down that section of all the things that were commented on and maybe, the tasks that came from that. Looking at talking with, lining up Mary and Tim and Don to come in and really talk about their section, their wheelhouse, and any kind of best practices or anything like that. And I don't know, Don, what your thoughts are on this, but maybe once we have that full list in the Google Doc, maybe you and I can talk about how you want to.
And we may not, now that I see this process, we may not need to break out, but I was just an initial thought. But I think we should go through the document after you've got everything in, and then we can see if it makes sense. But the process, the way it's working now seems to work. And then if we bring in Dawn and Mary, I don't know how much more, you know, I like what Brian had to say, this is like our constitution, and I don't know how many changes you really want to make to this. It's the bylaws where you make the changes, right? Or
I think when you-
recommendation.
And yeah, and I agree. And I see when you see things that aren't working.
Yeah.
Or they don't make sense, then certainly you need to at least find out some of these things we don't even know what they mean.
Right,
It
exactly.
seems a lot of the charter we're updating to update to go with the times.
Yeah, exactly.
And-
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's why it's every 10 years. You know, the world doesn't change every 5. I mean, technology changes every 3, but I mean, rapid changes, but you know.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Good.
Jim, do we want to set a date for our next meeting?
Yeah,
Do you have
so-
to look at your calendars?
So right now, we're doing the second Monday of the month. If that still works for everyone, that would be May 10th, probably 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
I'm
here.
No, we don't have a meeting that day as of
Not
now,
that night?
or a week before.
Yeah, I mean, we can move it up if you guys wanted, or if 7 o'clock. works
I
for
prefer, yeah, the 10th would be fine. Yeah, because we have our select board meeting on the first Monday. Right?
everyone.
Yep, the first and the
Yeah,
third.
that's why
So
we
this is
take
our
the second
in-between.
Monday.
Yep, that's right. I'm just looking at my
May
calendar.
10th at 7
Dennis, I
o'clock.
thought you did it for me, because FinCom usually meets on.
I have to go to,
Sheila, if you
I'll be
want-
back.
If you want some help looking up the master.
Did you go pick up Kayla?
Yeah, that'd be good. Once I get all the tests, maybe you and I can sit down.
Yeah.
and go through it. That'd be great. Excellent.
So, seeing that we've satisfied our agenda for
I
the
make a
evening,
motion to adjourn.
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, I've been here since 5:10.
You can leave.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.